I'm a medical student, and this is how I would prepare for the MCAT if I had to do it all over again. Really quick, there's a link in the description with free courses on study skills and discipline. Check it out, it'll provide a lot of context and auxiliary details for what I'm about to go over. So I'll start by just quickly going over how I and most other medical students prepare for our own exams, and then I'll show you how that applies to the MCAT. So as medical students, we have 2 years of lecture-style material before we take the Step 1 exam, which is a comprehensive exam over all the coursework for medical school. This is pretty similar to the MCAT. You will ideally take 2 years of pre-med coursework before taking your exam, which is also comprehensive in your sophomore year's summer. So the main challenge we're faced with isn't actually learning the material. That part comes pretty easily. The actual issue is remembering what we learned on day 1 for the exam 2 years later, and having enough practice with questions in the style of the exam. So to solve the first problem, we need a system that will have us automatically review content from past units even while learning new material. I, along with most other medical students, use Anki, which is an online flashcard app that's just a bit nicer and more customizable than Quizlet. So there's a huge Anki deck filled with 35,000 flashcards called the AnKing Step Deck. Typically, we learn content using a variety of third-party sources, such as a site called Boards and Beyond or Pathoma. You can think of these as similar to Khan Academy or the Kaplan books for MCAT prep. After learning, we go to the AnKing deck, which has pre-made flashcards that correspond to the resources we just learned from. We activate those flashcards, and that essentially guarantees we'll never forget that material as long as we keep up with the cards. We then have another service called UWorld, which is basically practice questions similar to our STEP exam. It's analogous to practice questions in the Princeton and Kaplan MCAT books, or even the official practice exams released by the MCAT administrators. There's even a new service from UWorld for the MCAT, which is apparently really powerful. So this is kind of what the process would look like. Let's say I'm learning about heart failure in class. I would go to this website, which happens to be Boards and Beyond. It's kind of like Khan Academy for you. And I would watch whatever videos seem pertinent to my current study. So in this case, heart failure basics. So after watching this video, I would then go to my Anki, and then I would find the flashcard deck that corresponds with heart failure basics from Boards and Beyond. So it would probably look something like this when I first opened up Anki. I would go to AnKing Step 1, which is this deck over here, open it up, find the subdeck for Boards and Beyonds, which is B and B, go down, find the subdeck for cardio, look for heart failure, and finally, here it is. Heart failure basics, which exactly corresponds to the video I just watched. So then I would go and I would activate all of these flashcards. As you can see, I've already activated them. We're actually doing cardiology right now. But if I did want to activate something new, like one of these 2 cards, I would just right click and hit toggle suspend, and that would add them to my deck. So how does this translate to MCAT prep? Well, it actually looks really similar. There's an AnKing deck made for the MCAT. You can find this by literally Googling AnKing MCAT, but I'll put a link in the description as well. Just download and import that deck into Anki. Then, when you learn something in class, go to this deck and unsuspend or activate the flashcards that correspond to what you just learned. Now, this does require a little bit of effort because the subdecks do not correspond to your university's lectures. They correspond to the various MCAT prep sources available to all students, such as Khan Academy, Kaplan, and Pixarize. By the way, as a side note, I would definitely get a Pixarize subscription ASAP, as it makes memorizing stuff for the STEM classes you're in much easier. Anyways, you have to look through the tags for a bit to figure out what cards to unsuspend. I would recommend finding a topic that's relatively similar to what you learned in class and just unsuspending all the cards in that subdeck. So if you're in biology and you just finished learning about photosynthesis, Go to the Khan Academy Photosynthesis subdeck in the AnKing deck and activate all the cards you see there. You may learn a few details here and there outside the scope of your class, but just think of it as an investment for the MCAT. So, assuming you've been smart and you're taking the prerequisites that you should take, you'll hopefully be done with the vast majority of this deck by the time you enter your sophomore year summer. If there are still cards that you haven't seen, and that's not unlikely, you have to finish them as soon as possible. Every day, just find a subdeck that you haven't seen much of, watch the video or consume the content associated with that subdeck, and then learn those flashcards. As a medical student, I would be able to do, on average, about 200 new flashcards a day, plus all my reviews, obviously. But as a pre-med, you would be aiming to add about 100 new flashcards a day. So now that you've finished the content, all that's left is doing practice questions. So here's how that goes. Once every 1.5 to 2 weeks, you're going to want to take a full-length practice test. How many full lengths you take depends on how much time you have left after finishing your flashcards. Make sure to take all the official practice exams, and if you have extra space in your schedule, take some of the Kaplan and Princeton practice exams as well. On all the other days, you want to keep up with your flashcard reviews and do a few practice passages. I would do at least 8 to 10 CARS passages a week, and it's up to you how you want to spread these out. I prefer doing 1 to 2 a day, but some people do 4 twice a week. The service you use for practice questions is up to you. As I mentioned before, there's a UWorld MCAT question bank, but it's pretty expensive, although it's probably one of the best ones out there. Kaplan and Princeton also have question banks, along with a service called Blueprint, and there exist more, but beyond that, it's really up to you to decide which one you want. By following this, you'll end up in a really good position for the MCAT. Good luck studying and go do your work.